Greetings, music lovers. I'm Ace, and you're tuned in to For the Rotation, the podcast where DJ stories become the soundtrack to your success. In each episode, we'll embark on a journey through DJ stories that transcend music, weaving through the highs, the lows, and the transformative power of resilience. Join me as we explore the rhythm of accomplishment, turning obstacles into opportunities as we learn how my guests did it all for the rotation. Welcome to For the Rotation, episode 6, live. And I cannot say enough about this guest, but I'll just bring him on. One of the most amazing people I have ever come across on social media, and is doing some amazing things that I cannot even describe. Please welcome to the show, the last DJ, Nick Hayes.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Absolutely, Nick. Thank you for being here. Um, I'm so excited to hear your story and share it with the world, and just dive deep into your beginnings. And I really appreciate you taking up the time. I know you're all the way out in the UK, right? And
Yeah, out in the UK, north in Yorkshire, I should say.
uh-huh.
It's just after about 10:15 now. So it's not quite after my bedtime, but it's getting there.
Well,
But
thank you
I
for
couldn't miss this opportunity.
oh,
So.
thank you for making the time. I feel honored, and let's just dive right into it, man. And let's start off with, what are your beginnings with music, man? How did that start, and how did you fall in love with music?
Well, I've always loved music my entire life, but I have to take my older sister into task there because she was 2 years older than me, and she went to work first, and she bought a fantastic stereo that she brought home, and she
Uh-huh.
started to play pop music and started to play music in the house. And I was 2 years younger. I was still at school, and she drew me into listening to music and how wonderful it was because she would listen to it, coming home from work, coming home from school. So my sister was a big influence there, even though she didn't really know it. Having a record player and a stereo in the house really got me started listening to music.
Wow, that's amazing. So, like, when you were collecting records in the like during that period of time, and then did
Yeah,
and what, like, did you end up having like a pair of turntables, and did you play music, like
yeah.
did you
I
DJ?
used to. Yeah, that's right. Well, I mean, I didn't DJ for too long when I was 18, but I can remember
Okay.
going. I used to do it I used to do a few barn dances, but they're not really a barn dance. A few discos for
Mhm.
people that had barns and wanted a DJ to come along.
Yeah.
And I can remember going to Boots when I was a lot younger. There's a shop called Boots in Wakefield, which is still going, and
Mhm.
it sold records at the time. It's also a pharmacy and does different things. And I used to go there every Saturday with what money I had from work to buy some records so I could build up a decent record collection. But when I stopped, literally DJing, I continued to
Mhm.
buy as many records as I could. And so it
Mhm.
really started, really, I'd say from probably 16 years old, I started to listen to a lot more music. And I'd say a lot more music than my friends did, even though, when they went to college and school, they
Mhm.
suddenly became very, very interested in music. I think I started a couple of years early, listening to Ike and Tina Turner, Nutbush Set Your Limits, which
Mhm.
I still, argue today it's an electronic dance song, even though it came out in the 70s. So,
Oh, wow. Yeah. So then electronic music, from what you're sharing with me, electronic music has been very, very apparent, like it's been a part of your life for a very long time. And I guess like what other inspirations have you had throughout your life that have led you to this career that you've had this, up to today?
well, I've always listened to a lot of music, but when I started, work in the motor
Hmm.
industry,
Okay.
right from, leaving school, I started off as a van delivery driver, and
Hmm.
you had a radio in the van, so you started listening to music. And when you were driving for 3 or 4 hours,
Yeah.
you had an opportunity to listen to Radio One, uh, you know, Atlantic 242, and even Radio Luxembourg. So you
Hmm.
had a lot of music coming your way from a very early age.
Hmm.
And right through my entire career, when I became a sales manager and UK sales manager, I was still
Mhm.
traveling, around, from here to Dublin to Spain to Germany, all over. But I was never too far from a radio, and
Mm.
sometimes when I was in my car, I was listening to music for 3 or 4 hours a time because I was traveling from one customer to another. So, the radio was probably the biggest influence. And second after that was internet radio, which was a massive influence to me because internet radio, to me, gave you thousands of radio stations with thousands of different genres available 24 hours a day for virtually no cost at all.
Mhm.
So really from being, 55 years old, I had a great opportunity to listen to a lot of music. And I also believe a massive input of music means you start to create an output from music, certainly if you're a DJ or you want to learn to play music. So a big
Right.
input means a big output. And that's why I always say to DJs, you're not only a good DJ, but you'll become a very good producer if you stick at it.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So what did music do for you when you were listening to it, and why were you so gravitated towards it? And there's people who just listen as a hobby, right? But it's from what you're sharing with me, it was a part of your life.
Yeah, it was part of my life. It was a very emotional connection because it kept you awake if you were driving the car. It was, an emotional connection.
Hmm.
And it was always, I found it really great to be waiting for the next track to come up or the next sound. And I always was very interested in the different sounds and different, uh, music you could hear because synthesizers had started, more and more from 1980 onwards. So
Mm.
there was a lot more interesting sounds coming along. And it helped you get through the day when you were seeing 7 or 8 customers a day selling, car brake pads. You had to have, you had to have something to boost your day sometimes when it wasn't going too good. So it was really, an emotional part of my journey. It makes you feel happy. All music makes you feel happy, I believe, whatever genre or whatever music you like. And
Hmm.
so, it's just a great thing, and it's free and it's readily available. So, I was in I was in the bedroom the other day, and I was doing some paperwork, literally, getting ready to put some music online, and had the radio going in the background, and I almost stopped what I was doing to listen to the internet radio because I was enjoying the music so much.
Oh, wow. So, when did was there a moment when your life switched and you started dabbling into the world of production? Like, when did that happen? Is there a moment in your life where the things started changing, or like, how did you start getting into that?
Well, I'd say that I'll take a step back. What really changed my life was when I was 55 years old.
Okay.
I was a car. I was a brake pad, car salesman. I sold brake pads for a living, and I
Okay.
wanted to progress in my job. And I've been in the same position for about 10 years. I still loved working doing that. And
Hmm.
the only way I'm going to get promoted at work if I get an education. And there was an opportunity when I saw an advert in the paper saying, "Come along and join Open University in the UK." Uh, Particularly before the fees were going to go up. So it was the last opportunity to go to join the Open University for about £500 a year. And I thought I'll do a business degree over 5 years. And little did I know how much it would change how I thought, how I worked. It was a complete game changer because it gives you a set of tools to look at life differently and to understand processes. And bear in mind, I left school, with very little education. When I left school, when I was 16, you basically got out, you went and got the first job you could so you could pay your bob when you lived at home. So
Right.
going to university when I was 55 was a game changer for me because I learned so much and it gave me so much confidence. And I was happy to take anything on board. And it made me think, well, I love music, you know, uh, how am I going to create music? And I thought to myself, well, I can do anything I want now. I've got a degree, let me get into it. And so when I was 59, I finished my degree. I graduated, from Huddersfield University in York. They sent me there, and then I had a massive void because I've been
Hmm.
studying 10 hours a week to get this degree. And I thought,
Wow.
right. So all that time was a massive vacuum because when I was traveling abroad, I was taking, my computer with me so I could study about different, theories. And all that time was now spare because I was still traveling. And so I thought, right, let me have a look at trying to mix some tracks together because DJ software is very cheap. And I
Hmm.
realized I was absolutely terrible at doing that. But what I did realize was that I was very good at cutting the tracks up. and making a different sounding track. And I thought to myself, I like this. I wasn't trying to be very good at it. I was just trying to enjoy myself. And it was more or less at the same time when Serato Studio came out, and they produced software for DJs to help them become producers. And that was a total game changer for me, because I suddenly could actually create music on this very cheap software. And I did it very quickly.
Right.
And I entered a competition of theirs by sending a 1 minute track in. And I was one of the 8 winners. And that's when everything began to click. I thought, how can a 59-year-old, how can a 59-year-old man become one of the Serato Studio winners, on a piece of music? And that thought, so maybe I should take myself a little bit more seriously. And that's when things began to click when I was about 59.
That's amazing.
So,
yeah.
It was totally unexpected. I thought, and it was actually a vote by people on Instagram. So it wasn't chosen by the company. You were voted whether your music was any good. And so I was quite proud because, I got some software for free. But the most important thing to me was they sent me a little, avatar of myself. And I've got that today, I thought that was brilliant. So little avatar, was like me, playing music. So that was nice. So it was all seemed to come together. I needed something to fill a void. I wanted to do music. Serato Studio technology became available for me to create music without knowing all the frequencies and science behind it and LFOs. And then, I continued that journey, hopefully becoming more and more sophisticated with more equipment and more software.
Wow. So I'm curious to know, just to take a couple of steps back and just kind of like really understand this and learn this about about the move that you made at the age of, so you said 55, right? To go get educated, right? But where would you say, or can you describe to me like what your mindset was before that age of 55, right? And where I understand that you go get a job to pay your bills and you do this and you do that, like, but would like what, like, why would you have I would say, what led up to that point? And then where was your mindset until you said that, and I know that you said you reached us to a certain point where, like, if I want to grow, in the way I want to grow in my career, I need to go get educated, right? But where was that mindset before? And then after going to school and getting educated, like, what was that mindset afterwards? So, like, I know you found the drive, right, to go do it, but how would you describe who you were before that, and how would you describe the person that you became after?
Well, before that, I was just really trying to do my job.
Okay.
And although I've been in my job about 10 years, I still find it very hard. Technology was progressing. The demands of the job were progressing. There was a lot of different things happening where I became very frustrated because I found my job getting very, very hard and very difficult. And I didn't know really how to deal with some of the challenges coming up because technology was expanding so quickly. Emails, video calls, everything was becoming an online function, and it was getting harder and harder. Even though I managed to cope with it and get through it, you had to be able to create presentations, you had to be able to communicate at a higher level. And even though I was trying my best to do it, I felt the only way I can do it is by getting a formal education, because I was dealing with people, far younger than me, who'd been to university, with company directors who wanted to be communicated in a certain way, who wanted to discuss things in a certain way, they wanted plans. And I realised that I would, for the past 10 years, I'd done okay, but I had to learn a lot quicker and understand things to have a future for the next 12 years, at work. So I really was probably pedaling like mad, trying to do my job and surviving. And then I thought, so I've got to do something. And I thought to myself, well, I've not got a degree. Why don't I just go to an Open University? And I saw it advertised, basically on the back of a newspaper.
Wow.
So, and that was just the perfect timing for me. What I didn't know was how much work was involved. I thought, I'll just do this, it'd be great. But I will tell you a funny story about my education a little bit later, if I can tell you now. But there was one of the things that I enjoy telling people about the educational journey, which I'm jumping about here, was that During the 5 years of study, I had a period of 6 months with no study. And so I decided to do a social media course in between because I was bored.
Okay.
And I didn't realize what the social media course was about. And the main subject of the social media course was actually uh, studying basically housework. You had to do a case study on how much housework people did on housework, how much women did, how much men did, and you had to put a theory together about it. And so when I finished that, I could actually talk about housework in very explicit terms. And that was probably one of the funny things, but also a very interesting things. So I think it's called the domestic divisions of labour was my topic.
Okay.
How do you divide up? So that was one of the funny things I learned. And having done that halfway through the course, it motivated me even more. Now I thought if they can make housework interesting as a scholar subject, anything can be interesting. So
Wow.
yeah,
Well, you know what's astonishing about what you just shared with me? It's
yeah,
almost like the like finding this ad on the back of a paper found
yeah,
you, right? And things sound very synchronistic in a way where when you were desiring something or looking for something, it found you. And then I think the most important thing that I walk away with, based upon this story, is that when it presented itself, you went for it, right? And I'm curious to know, like there's you know some people in this world, or many people in this world, sometimes think like there's a saying of, "Oh, I'm too old for this," or things have gone too far. I just,
yeah.
like, did that ever cross your mind? Like, and if it did, how did you overcome that?
Well, I think so. I think certainly it did cross my mind.
Okay.
Um, and then I think that was prior to doing my degree. When I started doing my education, my formal education, it gives you so much confidence um, that you don't think like that anymore. You think, right, I'm going to get on with it. I'm going to find a solution.
Mhm.
I'm not going to be put back by my age. It's a bit like when I was 40 years old, I started to jog again and run again.
Mhm.
And I just get on with it. I thought I can't let being 40-year-old man running around Wakefield Town Centre jogging worry me. I've got to get on with it. So probably as I got older and I did my degree, I tried to put as many excuses out of my mind. Or my uncle used to say, "Don't have a book of excuses in life. Throw
Mm.
that book away. Find a book which tells you to do things." So I found that always a good saying that used to say, they used to say sometimes we don't have a book of excuses. Just try and get on with it.
That's
And so my mindset changed certainly when I was, mid to late 50s as well.
That's amazing. That's great
Yeah,
advice, actually. That's very
yeah,
inspirational advice. Don't have a book of excuses. And
yes,
I think people can live by that. A lot of people can learn to live by that because we all have different excuses in life
yeah,
about why we can't do something or why things can't happen. And instead of just going for it, And so after you got educated, right? And I find this fascinating that you took a
yeah,
social media class
yeah,
because I mean, let's just like I mean, a lot of your career has been built off of that, right? Up
yeah,
to this moment. But what we can jump into that in just a second.
yeah,
But I think after you got educated, like I mean, you went to school to get better at your job, right? But then at the same time, um it kinda brought you back to your passion and the love of what your first love, which is probably music. And now this education and passion are, like, kinda being married together. Can you explain to me how that happened? Like, what was the first step you took to start manifesting this destiny?
well, I mean, I, really what happened was I had a massive void. I had a massive I had a lot of time on my hands because I finished my degree.
Mhm.
And I was listening to a lot of music, and I thought to myself, DJ equipment was very, very cheap, less than £100. And you can imagine with a DJ equipment, you need a massive, collection of music. And that's
Right.
exactly what I had over the years. I had, thousands of tracks. So I didn't have a lot of cost. I paid me £100, got me a DJ equipment in. which is probably less than £100, and started to, watch a lot of videos online, on how to try and be a DJ. And I was pretty terrible about it, but I really enjoyed it, even though I was terrible. When you hear the music and you're trying to mix it together, even though it's probably not perfect, you just love that feeling that you're in control, and you're trying to bring two tracks together.
Mm-hmm.
And I created some sets, and it's, even though I wasn't the best, I still enjoyed it. And you can record the sets, and I used to play them back in my car. So I'd go in the bedroom and mix music together for about an hour and a half, and then I was going on the road heading towards Scotland or somewhere, and I'd take my USB, stick it in my car, and I'd be off again, really. So it was, it started off with trying to be a DJ, which I realized I wasn't a very good one, but it led to a next journey,
Yeah.
which was I really found it very easy to cut samples up and tracks up and make them sound a little bit better than they were originally, in my opinion. So that was probably, how that started, really.
Wow.
So it's, but I mean, I would have never bought any DJ equipment if I'd not done my degree, because you have to, watch tutorials online. You have to understand it. You have to understand the technology a little bit as well.
Mm-hmm.
There's all little bits to it that you have to be able to take on board, and that can be overwhelming. But because you're so passionate about it, you push that aside and just get on with it.
So that started your transition into actually making music then, right? And then
I realized that I wasn't too good at doing long sets. I didn't really have the expert skills and listening skills to make tracks sound seamless.
Yes.
But there was two tracks that I was always trying to mix together, and I thought to myself, why don't I just chop these up? Chop the first minute of that one, add it to that one, and then add it onto the back end, because DJ software would allow you to do that. You could cut what they call scenes up. And I thought, wow, I've really enjoyed doing that. 2 hours of my life had gone, and I just loved it. And I thought, right, I'm not going to try and make any more mixes anymore. I'm going to cut some music up and try and make it sound better. In my opinion.
Sounds like you found your calling. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I realized that 2 or 3 hours I was chopping up tracks, and DJ software can do it, but it was quite difficult and it was a bit frustrating. And literally, then there was an advert on the internet saying, why don't you buy Serato Studio software? It's great for DJs who want to become producers. And I thought, right, literally clicked on it the afternoon, downloaded it, and that's when the whole thing changed for me. It was just a complete game changer, because within literally 3 or 4 hours, I understood how to use the software. It all just clicked in my mind. I thought, right, I understand this, and I can do it. It happened very quickly. And then the next day, I think probably the next day or the day afterwards, I produced my first track.
Wow.
So it was very quick. And and I used that software for possibly, a couple of years before I then developed onto more difficult software.
Wow.
Such as FL Studio. So probably after 2 years, the software, I needed to be able to do more with the software. I needed to be more sophisticated. So I then jumped onto a software called FL Studio, which again isn't very expensive, and you could do anything you wanted with that software. It was proper music production software. And then basically, I was watching YouTube, somebody making music on YouTube, and halfway through it, they started to play a synthesizer, and I thought, this looks interesting. So literally within 48 hours, I clicked on YouTube and bought a second-hand synthesizer, not knowing how to play it, not knowing how to use it. So it was, all decisions. I'd got a bit frustrated with the software. I knew how to use it, but I wanted to do more. The second software, I was getting a bit frustrated with that, and I thought to myself, although I enjoyed using the software, the synthesizer looked very connected. I thought, this is me grabbing software and doing something, rather than clicking buttons and dragging wave files over or creating sounds. I really felt connected to the synthesizer.
Oh, you did, huh?
Yeah, so I felt connected to it, and I felt that I could hopefully understand it very quickly if I could.
What a story of determination. So can you describe like that mentality that you encompassed, like where you just kept pushing like to learn more and learn more? Where did that come from? How would you describe that?
I think there was certainly, a hunger. and I wanted, I was very highly motivated to move on to the next thing.
Hmm.
And with technology changing so much as well, it
Okay.
meant that, I had a lot of choices in front of me, and I
Hmm.
wanted to improve all the time. I
Mm.
wanted that track to sound better. I wanted that track to sound better when it was played on a radio, or played in the car. And I
Hmm.
wanted to learn a lot more of the technical side, but not push aside the whole passion of creating music, because my passion for improving and creating, I just want that the end effect, the sound, the actual finished product to sound good. And I try not to get too hung up in all the technology that's in between me and creating that sound.
Mm.
But it's just a passion to try and get better and better and better. And the funny thing is, every year better equipment comes out. So you think in your mind, right, better equipment's going to make me better, but that's not the case. But it motivates you more the more things that become available to you to create music.
That something that rings to me that you just
Yeah,
shared is, not to get hung up,
yeah,
right? And I believe getting hung up on something or hung up on things or trying to be perfect at something when you first try to do something, it really it holds you back from progressing, right? Um, and it's, I mean, I believe that, we all, I mean, there's a lot of people in this world that strive for perfection. And I believe also that, like, if you strive for that perfection and it doesn't seem to look as perfect as it should be, right? We never
yeah.
really move on or move forward, or nor do we release it or share it with the rest of the world, you know? And that's what's really like really hitting notes with me about what you're sharing with me. So can you explain to me, like, um how long were you doing this, I guess, this progression and experimentation with music and developing your skills and, growing as a producer until you finally decided to start sharing it with others? What was that duration of time? Like, how long did that take?
I think it was about 2 to 3 years before I started to go online with music, because one of the things was I was working, I had a full-time job,
Mm,
and I decided to think, well, I'm going to do what I enjoy, which is creating music and recording the music. So I'll say it was probably 20, maybe 2 years to 2 to 3 years, to be honest, of learning my trade, learning what I was doing, because I was just enjoying it. I didn't have any, sort of wish to release music. I never thought it was good enough. But then, I thought to myself, well, why don't I just release it? It costs so little to put music online nowadays. And I thought, well, and then I then became, well, why don't I produce another track? So I did one track, two track, three tracks. So a couple of years wait, really.
mhm.
And I think I could have done a lot quicker, but I wasn't, it wasn't motivation to put it online. I just thought to myself, the time's right. It's easy to do. It's very, very cheap to do. And
Mhm.
you could even earn, point to blow 4 pence a play. So, you might get some money back after 20 years or something. So,
So when was the moment that you decided to start recording yourself and or like trying to share your art and your passion with the rest of the world?
well, that is great. I would say that was about maybe 18 months ago, in fairness, when I started to record, you know, tutorials, because I learned how to create music. I'd learned how to use a synthesizer.
Wow.
And I thought, I wonder how many people are on the same journey as me at the same age.
Okay.
And I thought to myself, well, I'm going to retire soon. Why don't I just record myself playing music and also give people do some 1 minute tutorials? And I did that for about 6 months and just put videos on YouTube, videos on Instagram, and I got very little response. People would watch them and maybe get 50 plays, a month or something. And I got a few questions, and then the big game changer for me was when one of my friends said, "Why don't you just record yourself in the video so they know it's a real person and not somebody who's just a pair of hands, touching the keyboard and talking?" And that was when it really, really completely, changed for me.
Wo-
Because you know that
Wow.
first video had, was it? I'd like to say 3.3 million plays, but it was quite a substantial amount of plays it had. and then it just went from there. It just went absolutely crazy, to say the
Wow,
least.
what a story. That's a lot to be learned for anyone trying to understand whether like why something is working, especially in the world of social media or sharing. Sounds like the reason why you have seen this response is because it became authentic at a certain point where it really showed the person behind it. I mean, did you have any was it uncomfortable for you to start doing that and showing your face, or like did you have to overcome certain fears or anything that like in between, or were you really comfortable right off the bat?
Well, there was a couple of things. One more important thing was I had to buy another camera.
Okay.
So I had to have two cameras. So
Yeah.
that was one of those. So I had to go online and buy another camera, and then I had to work out how to connect them and sync them all together. So it was
Right, right.
another bit of a journey. That was
Mhm.
another 10 hours on YouTube. Um, and I did feel very uncomfortable, I have to say, because I wasn't, I hadn't done it before. I hadn't made any videos before. So I just thought I'd do. I just did. In the end, I did a side view of me playing a track. In the end,
Got it.
and I had a massive monitor at the time on my desk,
Yeah.
and I didn't have the best lighting. But one thing I was determined to do was to make sure the sound was excellent. So I
Mm,
recorded the sound directly into my laptop and not with a microphone. So that although the video pitch wasn't very good, the actual sound, was good. And I think that probably helped me on a journey because there was a picture of somebody, my age, playing a synthesizer and it's hopefully really good quality music over an iPhone, over somebody's iPhone or computer coming out. So
mhm.
I was very uncomfortable, I have to say, but when I got a few nice, responses and people saying to me, how did you make that sound? How did you do this? This is really good.
Yeah.
It was very, very overwhelming because, going from 500 followers on Instagram to, I think it was 100,000 in probably 2 months was very overwhelming. I thought something was wrong. I had to phone my friends up and say, what's happening with my Instagram? Something's gone crazy with my Instagram. I said to them, you know,
That's g that's
I,
funny.
I didn't understand it. I
You
had no
couldn't
idea
believe
what,
it, huh?
yeah, I
Uh,
couldn't believe it. I had no idea. And
wow.
when I put my phone on in the morning, I switched my phone on. There was all these red icons with notifications,
Yeah, yeah.
and one of the tracks put on it had 2,000 comments. I thought
Uh,
it's definitely something gone wrong with Instagram here. So so it was very overwhelming and very very strange for the first couple of months until I could understand what was actually happening.
oh, man. That's I mean, I guess, like, it's something that you don't expect to happen, right? But at the same time, it's kinda like you you figure out that something works, and that's a beautiful feeling. So, like, taking me a little bit more forward, like, because I mean, actually, let's talk about sounds. This is a good
Yeah,
spot, okay? Because I mean, I've watched many of your videos,
yeah.
and they're absolutely like I love them because I'm an audio engineer, and that's how I
Oh,
started, and you use sounds. You use sounds, and the sounds that you use, I feel that you use them based upon your inspiration that you have around you. Like, one of them, I think it was like, a grass cutter, a
yeah.
grass
That's
trimmer, and, like, some of them are just, like, leaf blowers, and, like yeah, and I find it so, like, inspiring that you actually, like, you do this kind of, like, this really natural or this organic way of actually looking at sound and then incorporating it into your compositions. Can you share with me like how that came about? When did you start doing that, and how did that become a part of your 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 process of creation?
well, I moved from the bedroom, from the front bedroom into the garden because
Okay.
it was quite frustrating in a hot bedroom, and you felt quite alone.
Yeah.
And even though I had a couple of cameras and I could go online, I wanted to go outside,
Mhm.
and that's when it all changed because um, I hadn't got a table outside, so I dragged the dustbins had just been emptied, the paper bin and the bottle bin had just been emptied,
Hmm.
So I dragged those into the back garden and I set up outside because we had some power supply outside. And when I was doing my first video outside, we lived near a train station. So the train would come past quite often, every 15 minutes going to Leeds.
Yeah.
And on the same day that it happened, the refuse wagon was still unloading and loading at the bottom of the street. So I had a lot of sounds conflicting while I'm trying to play music. So I thought, well, I might as well just add them in. I might as well get the strimmer out. I might as well, start with other equipment out there. So,
Mhm.
and a lot of times the sounds did actually did actually complement the music, and it also
Mhm.
gave people an interesting starting point in the music. What's it doing with the strimmer? What's it
Mhm.
doing with that sound? So the
Mhm.
sounds were already there, and they just influenced me straight away. When I was going outside to do a video, playing some hard techno, I was interrupted quite a bit by all these sounds, and
Right.
one of the, and also by the Amazon driver delivering as well. So and he brought my parcel to me while I was playing that day. That was very funny. So,
I love it because yeah, it's like things that like I know that I hear, especially when I'm at home, and I find it so like fascinating that you actually found a place to put it, right? And within your composition, and it's absolutely super creative. And speaking of creativity, I I love your ability of just continuing to evolve, right? Your videos that you create are just I mean, some of them that you're using, which I definitely know that you're using some AI. I mean, I'm just fascinated that you actually are able to do that. Like, explain that to me, like and how important, like, if what important role does AI play in your life at this moment?
well, AI for me was not something I really wanted to do, but
Okay.
it was becoming such a big part of your life because of Google, because of online digital connections with different, organizations. If you want to speak to inland revenue, you're
Hmm.
connected by AI to a digital
Right.
network. So you have to embrace it. And I think one thing that what helped me on my journey was that social media services were also starting to embrace it. There was a lot of fear. And then suddenly they came on board and said, right, you can speak to an AI assistant,
Yeah.
we're going to embrace AI. So I felt it became legitimate for me to get involved in it. I didn't want to do it at first.
Okay.
But then I found an app, really a simple phone app.
Oh.
Uh, and that company, the company had just started to produce certain ways to convert videos,
Hmm.
to make them more, more colourful. And they started doing a fire one where it literally, could convert your video with the first 20 seconds into a
Hmm.
fire video that went back to you. But what I did was I actually did about 10 different videos, only
Okay.
about 10 seconds, only 10 seconds each, and connected all the AI together. So it made it a bit more interesting rather than just 10 seconds of something boring repeating itself. And that seemed to go down quite well. So I save all my AI I use and then, remix it together.
Yeah.
So when you see one, it's probably 10 videos earlier that I've used it on, but because it's all mixed together, it looks quite good sometimes.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's creative. That's creative. So how often are you now recording? Are you recording every day or
Yes, I would say every day, every second day. Sometimes I can write 7 tracks in a week, depending on how much of music I've listened to. Um, Today I think probably in the past 2 weeks I've written 3 new tracks. I've almost finished one today as well,
uh-huh.
because as soon as I've finished one, I want to do the next one. And when I'm halfway doing one, I want to start the next one. But I've got to say, no, you've got to finish it and record it. So I've got to be a little bit disciplined sometimes and say, right, this track's not quite finished. You've got to finish it off and then record it.
So
And
you actually keep moving between tracks just to keep moving forward, right? So you'll even
yeah,
start a new track even if you're not done with one.
I've got to do it. I've got to have something half done or half finished. So it motivates me to finish that track.
Ha.
And when I say I wrote 7 tracks in a week, I just felt I was motivated to do. I had a lot of ideas in my head, and today, I've almost finished a track, and then in the morning I'll probably start another track straight away. It depends on what music I've listened to that day as well. I may have listened to a lot of hard techno. I may have listened to some house music. So it just depends what I've listened to. I really notice there's a connection between what I listen to and what I produce the next day.
So, like,
So,
would you say the music that you're listening to really drives the compositions that you're making, or like, where do you find your motivation?
well, I want to keep improving. I definitely want I definitely want my music to improve, but there's also a little bit of insecurity, to be honest, because I
Okay.
feel insecure that my next track won't be any good and nobody listen to it. So,
Wow.
there's a bit of a fear motivation because, when I first started to make music, my tracks were played quite a lot and well liked. And it's always about you're only as good as your next track. So I'm always motivated to have a better track and to increase and do better. And I was pleased that a track that I did only a couple of weeks ago has had a really great response. And when I remember that, a lot of DJs are asking to take my music and to play my music. So they're my benchmark of DJs and fellow followers and listeners who ask me for the music. And I know if they want it in such demand, I know that I've still got it and I can keep doing it. But definitely a fear factor is a motivation. It's a good fear, to
Ah,
keep going
okay. So I was
forward.
going to ask you. I was going to
Yeah.
ask you about that. Like, so that insecurity it's also fear. So like, how do you turn that fear into your motivation? Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, well, the fear into the motivation is a very interesting one because it makes me push harder and harder for the best possible sound I can create. And sometimes I'll delete an entire track if I don't like it. I
Mm,
don't do that very often, but if there's a track I don't like, it's not up to my standard, I will just delete it and I'll start all over again. And
mhm.
so you really become quite tough with yourself,
Ah,
but I don't, so I do actually keep a lot of my music now. And I record it and I let my friends listen to it and say, what do you think? And they're very good judges. But it's a good fear to have because you've got to keep pushing yourself. You've got to go to the next stage. You've got to be able to add on different parts of the sounds. You've got to create different music. You've got to create fresh music. And
mhm.
you've got to go with the flow because what sounded good 6 months ago probably isn't what sounds good now.
Okay.
So I'm motivated by a little bit about fear. Can I still create a good track? And I'm motivated by because I want to keep improving. I want everything to be sound better and people to enjoy it more.
Mhm.
So and I tend to benchmark myself by the response I get from my followers. But my
Okay.
main benchmark is when the DJs come on and say, "Can I have 10 tracks for my next set?" And
Ah.
I was very flattered the other day when a DJ, played my track in, I think it was Estonia, and she recorded the track being
Mhm.
played and then she sent it to me as a thank you. And that just really touched me emotionally. Why would somebody go to so much trouble, to not only play my music to people in the nightclub and then send the video to me? That touched me. And I thought, it's all worthwhile that happening to me. It was fantastic.
That's beautiful. Feel it
Yeah.
sounds like a full circle feeling, like
It's
being
brilliant.
giving something out to the world and then
Yeah.
receiving something back. That's beautiful. So was there a moment in your like your production career? Okay. So we touched on the whole growing within three, like, trying to grow up within 3 years,
Yeah.
and then continuing to evolve, and then going into getting better at your craft, and then finally deciding. So like I'm asking, like what I'm trying to find out is like, was there a moment within that period of time that you ran into something, or can you share an experience with me in your life where, you were really tried or challenged? It could, I mean, even if it's not within the music career, and any time in your life where you actually had to overcome something very difficult and adapt and change.
Well, I think that it takes me back to university. The first year in university was the toughest I've faced in my entire life.
Okay.
The reason that was I had to learn to spell, and I had to learn to produce a paragraph. I had to literally educate myself so I could actually learn to be educated.
Hmm.
And I found it so tough because the your tutors were brutal. They were brutal with you. It was like going back to school. This is not good enough. You've got to be able to do this. And I found it really tough. When your first essay got 45%,
Oh,
you know, it was brutal. But I thought, so for 45% is better than 10%. I tried to see the positive of it. And it was very, very tough because when you're doing a degree, you have to learn to write in a certain way. you have to learn to do certain things in the process. You have to make sure you can fill 1,500 words. You have to
Oh,
acknowledge people, who've actually contributed to the work, referencing. And I found that so hard in the first year because, it was a tough journey. The tutors wanted you to improve, and they were
yeah.
very tough with you. And then, I just stuck with it. And then the final essay of the year got 92%. And I thought to myself, they're not being kind to me. They're just saying it's worth 92% because we're never kind to me. We used to always be very brutal. So when I got 92%, I thought to myself, right, I can go into the second year now with that in my mind. So
Wow. So you know what? Then these things that you're sharing with me, and like, and all the things that are compiling up to like what you've just shared up to this point, it really shows that you're very resilient, Nick. You know, and uh, I mean, can you describe what resilience means to you, and how do you channel that in your life?
well, I mean, I'll give you a good example, from yesterday.
Mhm.
From yesterday, the track I finished today, I thought it was terrible yesterday.
Okay.
I didn't. It was 4 minutes long, and I only liked the first 60 seconds of it. And I thought to myself, how can I progress this track? How can I take this track forward? I didn't know, what to do. I was stuck, and I thought to myself, right, I'm going to really just stop. I'm going to stop. I'm going to switch the synthesizer off, and I'm going to put some music on. I'm going to put some house music on, and I'm going to just indulge in myself. I'm going to look what's happening on Google at the moment, and just completely relax. And it really sort of recharged my batteries. Next morning I couldn't wait to get up to have a go at the track again. So it's a form of resilience, but it was almost like a natural reaction for me to say, right, stop, don't delete it, take a step back. I know it's easy to say, but that's what I did. I stopped, switched it all off, put some music on, and there was some great house music on that day on the radio. It was really, really nice house music. And the thing about the internet radio, you don't know who's playing, so you just listen to the music. You're not looking for a certain artist. And when I stopped and relaxed and just looked at what was happening on the internet and what was happening on Instagram, etc., the next morning I was raring to get into that track. I knew it was
Wow.
just a mind. I knew it was just my mind saying, my mind was stopping me progressing that track. And I just refreshed myself. And I think probably resilience to me is refreshing yourself and really starting again, because the next day, and another day is another day. It really is. I felt so different. And within about 5 minutes, I completed the track, and I was raring to go, on the next one then. So
That's that's the first time I think I've ever heard that, and
yeah,
I'm walking away with a lot of knowledge that way, which is like, to channel your resilience is to take a step back, and to al- just understand the next day. The next day is another day, and I like that because when most people talk about resilience, it's usually like, I find it deep down inside of me, and I push harder. But from what you shared with me, is that the strength comes from patience, right?
yeah,
And that's beautiful, because I think, a lot of people aren't too patient when they want something, right? And
yeah.
then and you want to get something, and you want something so bad that you just you don't allow the patience to take over in order for you to achieve.
Yeah, you have to do, you have to do some sort of like reflective learning. You have to try and
Mm.
learn, from your mistakes, and you have to learn. And maybe, one thing I tried to do when I was at work, I'll give you probably an example when I was working. If I
Sure.
didn't, if I didn't manage to sell, all my car brake pads to a customer,
Mhm.
and I didn't get the sale, on the way back, I'd try and reflect on why I didn't get it. And I'd try to understand why that didn't happen. Was it me, or was it the customer, or was it the product itself? And I used to do that all the time. And then I realized I was doing it less and less because I understood what I was doing wrong, and I learned to do it right. And I understood that process is as reflective learning or reflection. And it really helped me, move forward. And it probably applies to creating music. I found that when I was creating music, and I didn't like it and I had to stop, the next day the music did sound completely differently because I was coming with a fresh mind. So,
Mm,
try and reflect on, what's not working, take a step back, relax, and then try the next day, and try and reflect without being too serious about reflection. Just think, why didn't he buy that off me? Why didn't that happen? Well, I understand that. I wasn't prepared enough. Maybe might have been the answer, or maybe he didn't have the customer, didn't have the money. So just try and reflect, but don't be too serious about it. Just try and pick up on yourself a little bit.
I think you hit the note right there.
Yes.
Because my question was going to be, reflective learning could also be a little bit difficult for some people because I think it would be like, you could be very hard on yourself or maybe even beat yourself up for things that didn't work out for you. But I think the real key thing that you really hit on the head was like, don't be too serious. I think that's it's a very simple thing to say, but at the same time, I think it's a good thing to keep in the mind, and in order to actually really have something good come out of your reflective learning, right? And I mean, you can't really change the past, obviously, so it's more important for you to move forward, right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And so you've got to keep, tomorrow's another day. You've got to keep going forward, and
Mhm.
trying it. Even though things do go wrong, the next day is another day, and it can be a completely different day for you. And
Yeah.
try and enjoy yourself the next day as well. Try and do something that makes you a bit happy, which in my case is switching on the radio and listening to some music. Yeah,
I love that, Nick. Okay, so let's touch on something that I'm dying to understand. Okay,
yeah.
what the name, the last DJ? Where did that come from, and
Well,
and
the
uh,
last
and how did you
DJ.
find it?
Yeah, that's a very, very interesting question. It was going back to probably in the 90s, when I was a traveling salesperson. I became quite bored and had this idea to write a couple of books in between traveling to go
Wow.
to see customers or staying overnight. And this was before my degree.
Mhm.
So I managed to write a book, called Welcome to the Clouds Above. And I thought that book was quite boring. So I thought, I need to write a more interesting book, which I never completed. And the book was going to be about the last DJ in the world,
Okay.
because you weren't the DJs weren't allowed in the world, and it had been politics had said there was no DJs, so there was going to be no DJ in the world at all, and there was only one DJ left in it, and it was his job, uh, you know, to actually survive and bring music back to the masses, and to play DJs on secret sets. And so the book was about the last DJ. What would happen if there was only one DJ left in the world, and how would he bring music and passion in music back to the whole world? Because governments around the world didn't allow DJs. So there was one DJ hiding stopping from being arrested, stopping from being, captured. And the book was going to be called The Last DJ. So I still might write the book, but it depends if I have time. But that's where the name came. I thought, right, I'm going to call myself a Last DJ. So it was the first thing I thought about when giving myself a name, you know. So that's why it doesn't come back from, people say to me, it comes from the fact that you were the last DJ on, or
Oh.
nobody could remember your name. No, it's actually a book title I was going to actually write. So,
So there's the clarity.
yeah,
I get it. So for the unfinished book,
the unfinished book. Yeah,
just like, well, like, maybe one of your unfinished tracks just waiting to be finished,
yeah,
right? Yeah,
that's
I
it,
hope I
exactly.
hope I hope you finish that book. Yeah, that'd be
It's
interesting.
since I've been thinking about it, I definitely put more and more chapters together in my own mind.
Yeah,
You
it
know,
just makes sense now, right? I mean,
yeah,
you've taken on that name, and then
yeah,
here's your career, and then now I hope whoever's watching this now is like, oh wow, that's where it came from, and now you're kind of, well, now we're probably all waiting for you to finish that.
yeah. No, yeah. I think it fit well on a lot of the on a lot of the channels now, like Netflix or Amazon. Some of the stuff they're producing, and I thought it fit well in there. If I can ever manage to finish the book, maybe
Mhm.
maybe it might be turned into a film. But I'm happy to have the name. I'm happy to at least have used a name. I put the
Mhm.
name to good use.
So Nick, let me ask you something. Like you're continuing to grow in your craft, and and you're continuing to continue to, like, I put out music constantly,
Yeah.
and you're progressing, right? How, like, can you explain to me um what that looks like, and how what kind of, like, what are you doing to make like continue to grow as an artist, as a producer today? Like, what does that look like? What's the schedule look like, and what are you doing today to continue to grow? And what I'm trying to touch on is basically like how are you sustaining and maintaining your career?
Well, the next important stage, I mean, the next thing that motivates me is I want to play live a lot
Oh,
more.
okay.
So I've got a lot of live, well, I've got 2 or 3 live, sets planned. I do play locally quite a bit, in Leeds and in Todmorden and also in Wakefield. But I'm also booked to play some festivals this year. So I have to really keep my skills up. I have to have the best possible music,
Mm,
for those festivals and for those raves I'll be playing at this year, because I'm asked to play all the time. I'm more abroad, but quite a lot in the UK. So
mm,
I'm motivated by delivering a very, very high level of set, to my audience.
mhm.
And there's one thing I've started to incorporate in that. I've started to incorporate an effects machine.
Okay.
So so it helps me transition from one track to another on my synthesizer, but it can also give a complete new meaning to the track. So after a long time of just playing one synthesizer, now I have an effects machine,
Okay.
and my real motivation is producing an hour set or 1.5 hour set of what I call bangers, because nobody will complain about listening to bangers for an hour. I'm sure they will. I'm sure they'll just get up and dance.
Yeah.
So
Pro Producing them bangers. Yes,
yeah,
I've seen you use that terminology in
yeah,
some of your posts, and I love it.
yeah,
It makes me laugh so much, and, like, I mean it's how many when you're making this music, right? Like,
yeah.
let me just ask you something, like, do you, like what's your choice, like, I see your setup where is that really what you use to make your music? I see your speakers and your synthesizer, but I mean, is that just what you use for the outside, or is that what you're using in your home studio?
That's what I'm using today. I have one.
Are
I
you?
have
Wow.
I have a synthesizer, basically known as a groove box, but it's basically a drum machine.
Okay.
And I have some very small, but they're actually very good quality monitors.
Uh-huh.
And then I have a laptop that I record the sound into and some headphones. So a very,
Wow.
very simple basic setup. I've added that an effects machine to that now. So
Yeah.
it makes it sound better when you're playing live, because you can transition, you can go from one song to another. But it's a very, very simple setup. When I was playing in Todmorden the other week, at electronic open mic meetup where people meet up to play music, they was just said to me, "Your setup's so simple." And I says, it has to be, because, I have to be able to get a good sound out of it, and I have to be able to create music. So it's a very, very simple setup, less than £600, in cost.
Wow.
And,
Wow.
you can, and the setup itself, the setup, the synthesizer itself comes with some of its own patches or sounds.
Uh-huh.
And I like to go into those sounds and completely destroy them and make them my own. So if I hear a drummer sound, I like to make it my sound, or I'll
All
create
right.
it from scratch. So yeah,
Wow.
very simple setup, nothing complicated. No 5,000 or £10,000 of equipment. Just
Mhm.
some equipment bought off eBay secondhand, and some
Wow.
cables. So
So there's must be a substantial like difference when you go from your home studio, right, where you play, and then you
yeah,
take it to like a big sound system. Like, I mean, you're talking
well,
about festivals now, right? So
yeah,
I
well,
mean,
yeah,
explain that to me. Like, that just sounds absolutely insane to me that you go from those speakers and
yeah.
you use, like, I mean,
Well, I can best describe it when I played live at the Counting House in Wakefield last year, and
okay.
that's upstairs in a pub.
Oh.
And the thing that shocked me the most was it played like 1,000 times louder than my speakers at home. The lights were so bright, I couldn't see anybody at all, so I couldn't
Okay.
be nervous. I just had to play, because I couldn't. The sound was fantastic. It was a great sound system, but it was very loud,
Hmm.
and the lights were so bright, and I just went into my own world. I just played my music,
Hmm.
but it's such a fantastic feeling, because when I looked up, I could see people dancing. So
Yeah.
I knew the connection was correct.
All right.
And then when I played at the Hyde Park Book Club in Leeds,
Oh.
I played I played only 3 or 4 tracks there, but I played bangers, and I could see that the first 3 tracks, which were really hard bangers, people were loving it. And then I played a melodic track at the end,
Yeah.
and people didn't seem to be dancing as much. So I thought, well, that melodic track's going in the bin. I'm going to stick with
Yeah.
my bangers. So it's a great feeling to
That's
play live.
awesome. That's awesome. So, I mean, let me ask you a question, and I'm curious to know this, and this is kind of what kind of came into my mind right now. It's like when we started this conversation, we started off with the want and desire. First it was like the love for music. Then we
Yeah,
went into creating music, right? And then when you started creating music, then you started like, or you started off as a DJ, right? Or started
yeah,
DJing music, but then you started making music. And after
yeah.
you started making music, then you started recording yourself, and then you grew your popularity. But let me ask you something. Like, now you're saying to me that you now are desiring to play live. Did the did the was this thing about playing was this dream of playing live a part of the dream in the beginning, or has the dream just continued to evolve?
It was never part of the dream to play live at all because I thought I'd be too nervous.
Okay.
I didn't think I had the skills.
Okay.
I didn't know. I didn't understand the technology to play live. So
Mhm.
it was never part of my dream at all
Okay.
until I joined, Electronica North, which is a fantastic, I'm going to call it music club, but it's just a great collection of people who love electronic music,
Mhm.
and they were all playing live. And I thought to myself, why don't I give it a go? Why don't I just have a go at playing live? And I watched them for 2 or 3, 2 or 3 times I went there, and I realised it was a natural progression, but not till afterwards. I was very nervous at first,
Mm.
uh, but because I was using the machine all the time and I knew how to play, it just became so natural. So I'd never ever intended to play live. That was never
Wow.
on. I'd always intended to do music videos because that was going to be my journey to help people create
Mhm.
music,
Right.
but never play live. And now I'm completely hooked on playing live. I want to play live a lot more. And I'm looking
Wow.
forward to some of the venues I've got booked this year already,
Mhm.
and I'm talking to a number of people who want to book me as well.
Wow.
So I'll be definitely playing a lot more live this year to bigger venues and different people, and it's so enjoyable. My friend's in a band,
Mhm.
and in a band you start straight away. You almost start. You learn to play an instrument. You start a band. So they have a quicker journey to being in front of an audience. So
Right.
mine was a longer journey, and he just said to me, "When you start to play live, you'll never stop. You'll just love it."
Wow. That's amazing. So it's
Yeah,
almost like, your journey's never gonna end. You're just gonna continue to evolve. And, like, I can see that in you, where you just constantly are not necessarily looking for the next best thing, but the next level finds you as you continue to be true to your craft. And that's beautiful. So now there's one thing I've always been curious to know. Like, any in all your videos, you
yeah,
have this book or something written on a
yeah,
notebook, right? And like I've you can't really read what's on there, but I
yeah.
I was hoping maybe you could shed some light on what is on that book and what you're looking at.
Well, that book is actually the play order or the pattern order. When I have a synthesizer, it has 16 different patterns on it, 16 different scenes or 16 different parts,
Uh-huh.
and I think most people create those in order, so you
Mhm.
don't need a book. But when I create some music, I play completely out of the order I've created things in because I think it sounds better. So, so I end up with starting on pattern one, and then going
Uh-huh.
to pattern 16, and then going back to the original pattern one.
Mhm.
And I ended up with these very complicated patterns, and I could never remember them. So I
Mhm.
have to write them down. And it
Wow.
also gives me the opportunity to rewrite the music when I finished it.
Mhm.
So I might start off with, a very slow start to the track and then build it up.
Mhm.
And I might think that's rubbish. So I'll then rearrange all the patterns into different orders.
Okay.
So they don't go 1 to 16, they might go 1, 9, 12, 13, 16, 22, 15, 6, whatever.
Mhm.
So I have to have a book to remember it. And that's where the book comes in. So when I've done the videos, when I was doing the videos initially, I was finalizing the track. I was actually writing them down. So I've moved on a bit now. I actually use Excel because I've got 200 tracks. So I have to have them in a better format.
Wow.
So they're,
You
they're
keep
actually still in the books, but I transformed, I changed them all to Excel now.
I find that fascinating that you created your own way to translate your music so you can actually play it. That's really really cool. You're just, I mean, you just exemplifies this tenacity of consistently trying to evolve, and I love that about you. So let me ask you something: is there an artist out there that inspires you? What artists do you listen to that really helps you drive this music that you create?
Well, I've got some original artists such as Armin van Buren. Was a big trance DJ.
Hmm.
Um, John Digweed, who's a big house DJ, Nick Warren.
Okay.
But the most modern one, who I really do like, and I'll explain to you why I like this person, Amelia Lenz,
Okay.
a fantastic, techno DJ. And during COVID, she played a fantastic set,
Okay.
what I think was a house.
Okay.
And it was also a cat kept coming in, jumping on the vinyl records,
Okay.
but she managed to completely keep the flow of music. And so since then, I bought quite a lot of her, CD releases and music. I buy a lot of CDs.
Mm.
And one of my biggest inspirations, because of the music she plays, the style she plays, it's just great.
Okay.
And she's very skillful at what she does, particularly when she could play vinyl so well.
Mhm.
A lot of equipment will sync it for you. So one of the biggest influences is definitely Amelia Lenz today. I
Mhm.
think her music is just fantastic that she produces and makes and mixes as well. So,
Wow.
but I still listen to a lot of internet radio when I don't know who he's playing, unfortunately. But Amelia
Mhm.
Lenz is probably my biggest influence to date.
That's awesome. That's really, she's amazing. I love her music
Yeah.
as well. Okay, so let me ask you one really important question. I think this is really really important. I think everybody can walk away with something. So thinking about your career up to this point and everything that you've done and how you've gotten to where you're at, right? If you had the opportunity to speak to your younger self, right? What would you say to your younger self to help them get to where you're at today, to make it a little bit easier, or maybe even uh, do it a little bit better, or get through a little bit better?
Well, I would say that one thing the biggest lesson I've learned probably is just think about the end result of what you're trying to do, and definitely not all the science in between and all the frequencies and LFOs and all
Mhm.
the technical sound. Because when I started my journey with music, I approached it like a lot of people did, watched a lot of YouTube videos, tried to understand the complexities of making, a sound more interesting. And that can be very, very frustrating. And it tends to push you back because you're trying to learn all the time. I was taking notes, watching YouTube videos. I was thinking, great, I can make that one drum sound. So I spent far too much time watching YouTube and studying. And I was 80% on YouTube and 20% on my synthesizer or my software. It needs to be the other way around. You need to be 80% on your machine and 20% studying what other people are doing. And you'll progress a lot quicker because muscle memory kicks in. You remember things better and you enjoy yourself a lot more rather than watching YouTube videos on how to do something. So get stuck in is possibly, the best message I can give people. Get on and do it.
Wow, that's
That's
that
it.
that's really really good advice. I
Yeah.
think we can walk away with some really important advice from that, because I think what you're sharing is your mindset, and I love that, because it seems like you just continue to evolve because you keep doing instead of trying to think about it. And I think a lot of us can walk away with a very important message from all that you've shared. So Nick, at this point, I'd love for you to share with everyone, how they can find you, and go ahead and share, like, what
Oh,
how,
yeah,
where they
sure.
can find you and
Absolutely.
how they can
Yeah.
look you up.
Great. Well, thank you. I mean, well, I'm certainly on Instagram. I'm on
Okay.
Instagram as the Last DJ. I'm on YouTube as Global Shuffle Dance, but really it's now connected to the Last DJ. So if you Google Last DJ on YouTube, you'll find me there as well. I'm
Mhm.
also on Threads, and I'm also on Facebook as well. But also on Facebook, I'm on as Nick Hayes. But I've connected them all to The Last DJ, so you can find me on Facebook, Threads, YouTube, and Instagram as well. But most of the social media channels, but those are the ones I'm limiting to myself. So I've got time to make music and also produce some videos as well.
Keep producing. And so actually one other thing I'd like to know, and then maybe this isn't I want you to share this with all of us, is what are you most excited about right now in your career, and what do you what are you working on that you can share with us?
Well, what I'm working on at the moment is a lot of high density, a lot of hard techno.
Okay.
I'm definitely making normally when I produce music, I just let the flow go, but I'm trying to create a mindset where I'm creating a lot of hard, high energy techno. And because of that mindset, I'm actually making more high techno. The track today is a banger, or I should say it's a very hard, drum track. So I want to produce more of that music because I seem to enjoy doing it, and it seems to come to me a little bit easier as well. And I want to bring that music to audiences. I want to go and play live to them. I want to go out there, and I'm happy to write a track on the Monday and play it on the Tuesday. So my journey is about creating a lot more high energy, high BPM tracks and getting them out there for people to listen to the next day or the same day, and also play live as much as I can. I just want to play live as much as I can. I'm ready for, a lot more live performances.
I look forward to more of your live performance. I look forward to seeing you live one day. I also look forward to seeing a lot more of your content because I love it, and don't ever stop, Nick. You're an inspiration to us all. You're also an inspiration to everyone who's thinking about pursuing their dream and just thinking about it only, and not taking the first step and just doing. And we all can walk away with some very, very important information that you've just shared with us that will inspire us all to push on and push forward and stay motivated and actually be motivated to push forward, because honestly, you're a walking example of it, of not only just not necessarily just reinventing yourself, but I think at the same time, just your level of belief really shows that anything is possible if you don't have a book of excuses.
Yes, that's right.
And you continue to push forward, right? And you don't get hung up on the details.
Yeah.
And you do more than sitting there and learning about something. Instead of that, you actually do it, right? And you
get on and do it, and have a good time and enjoy yourself doing it. Have some fun.
Most important, have some fun. All right, Nick. I encourage everybody to look up Nick Hayes, The Last DJ. Nick, you are a legend to me, and I appreciate you so much. Look forward to me having you on in the future, and then even hearing more about your journey and what other things you've come across. And thank you for taking the time, Nick. Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you. It's been great.
Absolutely. You have a great evening. And until next time, check out fortherotation.com for any other for other featured content. Thank you for joining us here live with Nick Hayes, The Last DJ. Till next time. Thank you for tuning into For the Rotation. If you found inspiration in today's episode, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. Please visit fortherotation.com to view more episodes and support our podcast by purchasing some cool merch. You can also find us on all social media channels at For the Rotation to engage with our community of dream chasers. Until next week, keep the inspiration flowing and your dream alive, and return to learn how we do it all. For the Rotation.